It seems then that Final Fantasy VII fans once again have reasons to be excited. So there was a little bit of silence after the release of FF7R last year, but now over the last 24 hours there have been multiple announcements. The biggest one is probably the PS5 version that has been announced for Final Fantasy VII Remake to be released in June, and with that, a whole new episode of gameplay involving the character of Yuffie. I'm going to be talking about all of these things on the channel, so please do subscribe if you haven't already. But today we're going to be focusing on one particular announcement, and that is Ever Crisis. And even since the announcement and the trailer last night, there have been plenty of questions as to exactly what is this going to be about. Well, fortunately there has been an interview with Famitsu, and this is an interview that was conducted with Tetsuya Nomura, and he's a busy boy at the moment, working on a lot of Final Fantasy VII stuff right now. What we already know from the actual reveal of Ever Crisis and the trailer is that it's going to be a mobile game. It's looking like it's going to be episodic in nature. I'm getting Final Fantasy XV Pocket Edition vibes from the initial announcement. I'm a little bit cautious about that because I wasn't the biggest fan of that, I'm going to be honest with you, of FF15 Pocket Edition. But it's also going to be drawing stories from all aspects of the Final Fantasy VII Compilation, not just the original game. And it's sort of being hailed as a new remake as well. Obviously, a different kind of remake to the huge release that was put out last year, but still, it is Final Fantasy VII, the original story being recreated from the ground up. So let's get ahead into the interview then with Nomura. And again, thank you to Audrey for these translations. So, answering a question about the different stories from the compilation, Nomura says that Ever Crisis is basically kind of like another remake of the original FF7, using a bird's eye view of the field with chibi characters, but also incorporating regular full-bodied detailed character designs for the battles. It will be command-style RPG. So the game is the answer to those who said they like the command-style RPG system. Okay, I'm assuming this is referring to the, the battle system from the original Final Fantasy VII. He goes on, the titles are divided into chapters that allow you to have a free game playstyle. Okay, so this is interesting. The titles are divided into chapters. Okay, the contents will cover the original game and work their way through the compilation and include FF7 The First Soldier. In regards to the First Soldier, Ever Crisis will also have part of the story within this game. In particular, since the story covers what happens before Soldier was established, we've also added in a part about that legendary hero's youth. That story in particular is a huge eye-catcher, and we have asked Nojima-san to write the scenario too. We hope you look forward to it. Okay, so there's going to be an episode that's focused on Sephiroth, but Sephiroth's backstory. So are we going to be able to play as Sephiroth as he makes his journey from, into Soldier and what have you? Because I'll be honest, that's going to be pretty darn awesome if that's the case. I'm not sure about this though, the First Soldier, because one of the other announcements from yesterday was a mobile game called The First Soldier. So is that what he's referring to here? Is that going to be linked in with Ever Crisis? Or is this a translational thing? Is he literally just talking about Sephiroth here and it's just being translated as The First Soldier? I'm not sure about that. But yeah, being able to play with Sephiroth is obviously every Final Fantasy VII fan's dream come true. So that's going to go down pretty well, I would imagine. Right, so I just want to skip down a little bit to here. In regards to the chapters, will the stories be added as new updates? Okay, this is going to answer the question I think a lot of people are having. Nomura says, that's right, new chapters will be added every month. Okay, so this is definitely going to be a mobile game through and through, isn't it? It's not just going to be a game released and there you have it. It looks like there's going to be individual episodes that are going to be released. I guess you have to pay for each one every month in order to get through the whole thing. Okay, in regards to the battle parts, it looks like it took the battle system style from FF7R and made it into a command style RPG. Yeah, I noticed that. If you look in the trailer, when the characters are moving through the field, they look like they do, obviously with the updated graphics and what have you, but they look like they do, the same style as in the original game. But then when we switch over to the battles, it looks very much like the remake at that point, doesn't it? But the remake with a command battle system. So they've got an interesting mashup of all the different styles here, from the original Final Fantasy VII to the remake, all being brought together by the looks of things. And Nomura says the battle system for the original was based on the ATB system, so we will be going with that game style. So just a clarification there of what he's been talking about with the command battle system. He is talking about the ATB system from the original FF7. The materia setup will also follow the original, and weapons, materia possibly, summons and limit breaks can also be used, further opening the battle system. Yeah, it was interesting in the trailer how we see Aerith, Ifrit, Leviathan all being used against the Guard Scorpion. I think it's because of something that he said a little bit further up here. We read it earlier about having the freedom to play through these chapters. I'm guessing as you unlock things later on in later chapters, you can bring those back if you want to replay and, you know, not be limited with some of the things you've collected, such as summons or party members. And then an interesting note at the end, actually, from Nomura, where he mentions that because they're working on so many Final Fantasy VII titles and content right now over at Square Enix, that I guess he's just struggling to divide his time. He says he's kind of stuck, and that goes for the voice recording as well, because he's involved in just so many amounts of titles. Yeah, you know, what do you guys think of that? Are they stretching the development too thin? Now, obviously, all of these games are going to have their own development teams. No question about that. But the actual creative forces for Final Fantasy VII is still going to be a select group of people. And they are now going to have to be using their efforts on all of these different games. And hopefully that won't affect the finished product, you know, the quality of the finished product. I'm sure Square know what they're doing. But yeah, sounds like Nomura's saying he's very, very busy at the moment. And I think we can all understand that. Just hopefully, you know, with the creative force behind Final Fantasy VII working on so much right now, that is not going to affect the quality of everything we're going to be getting. So there we have it. There's some clarification on Ever Crisis. It is going to be a mobile game. It is going to be episodic in nature, and it is going to be drawing from all the different stories found within the various compilation titles. So I wouldn't expect Ever Crisis to be as in-depth in terms of story and character development as the original games. Even though I don't think I'm going to be a big fan of the Final Fantasy XV Pocket Edition release style, if that's what they're going to be going for. Some of the gameplay footage and that I've seen from the trailer does have me intrigued, and I'm, you know, a huge fan of the original Final Fantasy VII. I still love the battle system to that day. Many people believe it's antiquated. I get that, but it just has so much nostalgia tied up in it for me that to be able to get back into that type of battle system with Final Fantasy VII is something I would very much look forward to. And finally, a brief word on the fact that Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis is going to be a mobile game, because obviously I'm not blind to the fact that it's going to be putting a lot of you off to begin with. And I understand that, I really do. You know, I'm not a mobile gamer myself. How often do you see me cover mobile games on this channel? You don't. But I also recognise that there is a huge, huge market for this type of thing. And Square are not just going to say no to that. You know, they're going to be potentially bringing thousands, millions of more people into the world of Final Fantasy VII through projects like this. Of course, mobile gaming is also associated with the poisonous business models that are generally brought with that. And I'm hoping that Square aren't going to go down that route. But clearly, the monetization model for Ever Crisis is not going to be the same as it would be for a full-blown game on the, you know, the current generation of consoles. But that's what I have for you today. So a few more details on Ever Crisis. As I say, please do share your thoughts down in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more FF7 content going forward. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye, everybody.